Hello and welcome to the Battle Reaper watercolor painting. I'm going to be painting the Battle Reaper in watercolor on watercolor paper using Koi watercolor paint. And if I say watercolor another time, it's probably going to be too much. Um, anyway, so I'm going to try something a little different this time. I'm running my actual video so that I can describe what is going on. And so here in the beginning, I've got a sketch in my black sketchbook that is the Battle Reaper, and I've redesigned him. I'm going to go ahead and sketch him out on the watercolor paper, and I want to give you a quick history of like the evolution of my Battle Reaper character. So he started off as a sketch from sometime in the early to mid 90s. Around 1999, I had redone him or did a newer sketch with when I was doing the Reaper comics, and just over time, he's slowly built up to a different look, or a little bit different anyway. So here I go. I'm sketching him out on the watercolor paper with an HB pencil, laying in the foundation and the basics. And this sketch is actually partly based on a reference. I used an art model reference from a book that my wife bought me, so I could create a fairly decent pose. And yeah, so this is me going through the process. This is only at 400% speed, I believe. So it's still faster, but it's not super fast yet. And I'm gonna go ahead and pause my video while this goes on, and I will be back with a when I have something else to say. Okay, so now the drawing is nearly complete, and I'm just getting the finishing touches. And then I'm going to go ahead and erase it real quick there. I've erased it so that I would have very little pencil coming through after I put the ink on the drawing. As that when I have to erase the pencil out from under the ink, sometimes the pencil will smear along with ink or lift the ink entirely. So I wanted to make sure I had as little of that as possible. I'm just quickly laying in the ink here. I wish I could actually ink that fast. It would be pretty cool. But so just real quickly here, we're gonna go over the lines, add shadows, and get the basic sketch in place for the whole thing. All right, now the inking is done, and I'm going to begin actually laying in the colors. Or I started by putting rubber cement over the areas I wanted to protect. I was experimenting with some rubber cement masking this time. And so then I've laid in a very pale yellow in the background, the clouds or smoke that are back there. I'm going to be using a hair dryer throughout this painting to try to help speed things up, get it dry a little bit, and then paint some more. It's kind of cheating, but it works pretty well actually. As long as your watercolor is not laid down so thick on the paper that the hair dryer will blow it and cause it to go places where it doesn't belong. So as you can see here, I'm just building this up with the yellows, and maybe I'm starting with the greens as well. And you can see how everything kind of runs together. The wet paint likes to flow into the other wet paint. And now we're definitely getting some green in there. And I'm going to let this process go for a little while. I've got a lot of green to put in before this will be done and I move on to the ground. Now here you can see all the colors I have laid out in my palette. These are the Koi Watercolors that I've mixed up with water inside those little trays. And I've got a range of yellows and greens and blues that I was planning on using throughout the picture. And what I'm actually doing right now is just laying in some of the darker greens, trying to work up some of that smoky, billowy texture. And I'm creating a darker area in the very back where it's going to be less saturated, less bright, but it's going to have kind of a highlight in the center of it that'll help to make the sides stand out a little bit more right there. Kind of keeps that interest in that corner of the picture. And let's see. Yeah. So still working with the greens, just one coat at a time. Let it dry, or use the hair dryer to get it back down to where I can add more. And I'm just slowly building it up. Okay, now I have the greens pretty well laid in the background. I've added some really dark areas that are, in this video, they look almost black, but they're not quite that dark. I spread it around a little bit. I had some really nice contrast going back there, and I painted in the grass real quick. And I began to add the brown for the ground, which that brown comes out a lot lighter than what I was expecting it to. So that's definitely going to need some work, but it's a good start. And just adding in some more brown, saturating the ground a little bit with that brown color. And at this point, I'm laying in some really light blues across the character. They don't even seem to be showing up in this video. Like, you can't even see it in the camera, but it's there. It's definitely there. But some of my coloring was so light in the beginning that it took 3 or 4 coats to actually get to show up. Now you're starting to see some blue show up in some of those areas, but it's a very faint, very gray blue. And that's kind of what I was going for. I wanted that gray blue color. And some of my blues are a little bit more saturated than what I was expecting, or what I really wanted to get. Okay. We're just still working in those blues. And there's going to be several layers of this. As you can see, I've got at least 4 different blues in my palette that I'm working with. So I'm going to just let the video go, and I'll come. Now at this stage, you can see that I've really got the blues in there. I mean, it's super saturated and it's very blue. It looks pretty cool, but it's a little too colorful actually for what I was going for. So I'm continuing to work with those blues, and I've laid in the wood shaft of the scythe, and I've painted some brown and blue into those rocks on the ground, and I'm laying in the red trim for the Battle Reaper's armor. So it has red trim around like all the individual pieces, and the spikes and everything. They have some blue and whatever in them, and I'm beginning to lay in some darker grays. As you can see in my palette there, I've remixed some colors. I've got much less saturated grays. They're still kind of blue or violet, but they're definitely grayed up. And I really worked these in over a few more coats. And in fact, it actually got so thick at one point that it was starting to cover over my ink lines, like in the chest and in the legs. And so I've had to make some adjustments at the end of the video, but we'll get to that shortly. At this stage, I am refining some of the trim, at trying to add a little bit more darkness or a little bit more of a highlight to the pieces of the trim, while also working with my very dark blue color, dark blue gray. I'm actually adding in the scale mail texture in the loincloth and the chest, or the abdominal piece and the neck of the character, and really trying to deepen up those boots and the dark areas of his leather, because I did not want the armor, the metal armor and the leather armor to mesh so much, like so they don't look the same. And again, in my palette, I've remixed some different colors. I'm actually going over the background with some of the light gray color, so I can knock down some of that vibrance, because it was way too bright. I wanted to make it less bright, less vibrant. I'm using those blue grays in everything, um, kind of trying to deepen it up a little bit. And of course, right there in the end, I mean, it's going really fast, but I had to wipe out some flooding that was going on in both of the characters' hands with a paper towel. You can use that to get rid of stuff. And now I've let everything dry, and I'm actually redoing some of the line work with a brush and ink. I'm just going down, adding in a darker back, or a darker outline along the back lines of the character, and adding in some of the shadowy details, and just kind of doing those last little bits of touch up. And of course, it was right around here that I realized I never got around to actually doing anything with the skull. So I took a watercolor brush marker and I quickly laid in a little bit of color with it and did some yellow work on the backlighting, and that was it. This is the finished product. Thanks for watching my video, and um, you know, click like and subscribe if you liked the video, if you want to see more. And as always, I have a Patreon. If you're not on it, I would really appreciate it if you joined it. Thanks again.